Okay, welcome everyone. My name is John Conte, President of the Round Hill Association. Thank you for attending this special event today, co-hosted by the Round Hill Association and the League of Women Voters of Greenwich. We have with us today Sandy Waters, President of the Greenwich League, and of course our honored guests, who will hopefully be joining soon, Fred Camillo and Selectmen Lauren Rabin and Jill Oberlander. Before we begin, I wish to send out our best wishes to our members, our neighbors, residents, and all attendees viewing this webinar today. We wish you the best in these difficult times and send out our sincere hopes that you are faring well and managing to stay safe and healthy. We know there's so many struggling, and those who have lost loved ones, our hearts go out to you and our families and your families. I say to you all, remember your neighbors. It's times like these that connections are most important. The Round Hill Association, as with all neighborhood groups, exists to bring people together and provide a voice, to create strength in numbers, to seek solutions, and to fight against shared threats. We've not faced a foe such as this before, but together we will find our way. Please don't hesitate to reach out to our group or to your neighbors if you are in need. That's what community is all about. Our townspeople have shown amazing resourcefulness, resolve, and a willingness to help each other. Thank you all for doing your part. And we thank our local leaders for their hard work and for taking time to share their thoughts with us today. They will discuss their first 100 days in office and their vision for the future of our town. With that, I will invite Sandy to explain the details of our webinar and how we plan to proceed today. Sandy?
We're all learning new skills here. I hope everyone on this call will understand that we're in the process of adjusting to a lot of new technology, and hopefully this will all run as we intended to. A webinar functions a little bit differently from a normal Zoom meeting, and here's how. We have, as you can see, all of you who are in on the call as an attendee, you will be able to see 5 people. Right now there are 4 of us on the screen. John Conte and I, and Craig Jones is a tech person who's helping us iron through some of the issues with this. And then in addition, we have Lauren Rabin and Jill Oberlander, and hopefully Fred will be in attendance in a second as well. So the panelists are the 3 selectmen, and both John and I would serve as moderators. And you can see and hear the panelists and the co-hosts, but we can see that you're there, but we can't see and hear you. And we do that intentionally to enable the focus of the attention is on what the selectmen have to say to us. However, as the event goes on, if you have questions, you may submit them through the Q&A icon that's at the bottom of your screen. And if you look there, put your mouse or whatever, your arrow, onto that Q&A, you will see that it opens up a panel, and then you can submit your questions. And at the for the last 25% of this meeting, we'll be taking questions from you and directing them to others. So don't wait, just submit your questions, and we'll go through as many as we can.
Sandy, quick point on that. Since there may be several questions of the same category, if you can start your question with like a 1-word topic,
right,
and then type your question, because we'll be scanning the questions and we'll try to group questions that are of similar nature.
Right. Okay. So basically, what we're the structure of the webinar is as follows. First, Lauren is going to speak to us a little bit for 5 minutes about what her views are and issues that are of concern to her. And that will be then followed by Jill, who will do the same thing in a 5-minute period. And then Fred will have 10 minutes to talk about the topics that are of interest and concern to him. From about 5:25 to 5:35, the Round Hill Association will pose questions to the Board of Selectmen. And then we will have an opportunity as the league, I will pose some questions that we have formulated about that. So that takes us to 5:45. And at 5:45, we'll start to take questions from you. And we'll go down the list. If you give us the topic, then we can, both John and I will share a responsibility for directing the questions to one of the panelists. So there we are. Lauren, do you want to start? And we'll go there. I still don't see Fred on this, so I'm not sure.
He's logging in now.
Is he logging in? Okay. Hang on. Do you want to?
I could go ahead and start if.
Go ahead and start. I think it's better to start.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much to the Round Hill Association and the League of Women Voters for making this event possible. And thank you to the audience for taking time out of this beautiful day to attend. I also want to thank my fellow Board of Selectmen members, Fred Camillo and Jill Oberlander. Who knew when we were sworn in that we'd be sitting here today on a Zoom call during a pandemic, navigating daily the uncharted waters we face as leaders in order to deal with the health of our residents and the fiscal health of our town. Fred, Jill, and I came into our roles with many ideas what we wanted to accomplish during our terms. And we're so fortunate as a team that we have varied skill sets as well as varied interests and have been able to pursue activities and initiatives accordingly. We are also unified in support of one another as we make the tough decisions to keep our residents and those on the front line safe. It almost seems improper to discuss any accomplishments outside of dealing with COVID-19. However, there were 3 initiatives I pledged to work on when I was campaigning for my seat. One was in the context of service. First of all, to increase our public-private partnerships to lessen the burden on taxpayers, and second, establish transparency among our independent boards and commissions to better promote communication. As the Board of Selectmen liaison to the Commission on Aging, I am working on strategies for our age-friendly designation to communicate our service offerings. We are planning a one-step portal where residents and caregivers can find all the resources available to them instead of looking them up in individual agencies or for-profit offerings. We're taking an outside-in approach rather than presenting information in silos. I am also liaison to the Selectmen's Nomination Advisory Committee. We are using Zoom to interview candidates and will be taking a more holistic approach to appointments. I've also started to attend many boards and commission meetings to better understand how each board operates and if they are doing so in accordance with their charters. There is opportunity for interaction amongst boards. For example, board members from Health, Human Services, Nathaniel Witherall, and the Commission on Aging can share best practices and ideas to improve service delivery. And this is something I plan to facilitate in the coming months. My second topic that I wanted to focus on was schools, maintaining and strengthening our capital assets with a smarter, more focused approach towards spending and helping to ensure the successful tenure of our new superintendent of schools. Coming off the Board of Education in November, I was part of the initial process to create the operating and capital budget requests. And now, given the plan to keep fiscal year 21 operating budgets flat to fiscal year 20, I am optimistic we could focus our budget dollars where they'll have the most impact, and I personally thank Dr. Jones for her leadership. The third area of focus was emphasizing more creative ways to use technology to reduce government spending. Perhaps a silver lining from the pandemic is realizing that there are services we can offer our residents remotely via technology. There will always be the need for face-to-face interaction, but some tools and technologies that have allowed us to operate remotely will present us with new opportunities to optimize non-people costs. I've also been attending training offered by the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. Full transparency, I am 10 weeks overdue from getting my braces off, and at times it's quite challenging. And from time to time, I'm attending our area Council of Government meetings. These have been great opportunities to learn about best practices and some of the latest technology ideas, such as artificial intelligence being combined with human intelligence. It's hard to believe that 5 months have gone by and there's still so much to do, whether it's pedestrian safety, our economic recovery post-COVID-19, or our environment, just to name a few. The current crisis needs to act as a unifying force, bringing us together to face the new challenges, and it has presented us an encouraging connection and conversation. I continue to welcome ideas and communications from the community, and I will continue to work closely with Fred and Jill to keep Greenwich strong. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Excellent. Thank you, Lauren. Jill?
Thank you. So I want to start as well by thanking the League of Women Voters and the Round Hill Association and to all of you who tuned in on such a beautiful day. And having not coordinated any of this, I want to thank Lauren as well for her introductory remarks, and I'm going to modify on the go. Without a doubt, I'm sure you'll hear when Fred talks, the past 2 months have certainly changed the direction of our first 90 days. It is fair to say that COVID has redirected us and also changed the way we work together. Before this all happened, actually, the most frequent question I got was, how's it going? And it's all going great, good, as far as our working together, our working relationships. So you should know that we're all working very well together, cooperatively, to reach the best solution for our town and our residents. I particularly want to use this opportunity to recognize Fred for the way he's leaned into the challenge of COVID-19, and to commend him for welcoming participation by me and Lauren as we navigate all of the challenge. It is no small feat for what he's doing. I also want to use the public opportunity to thank all of our frontline workers, healthcare, first responders, essential town employees, dedicated volunteers and nonprofits who have stepped forward to make sure no one falls through the cracks. That includes as well our teachers and our parents navigating special challenges, working from home and educating our students. In addition to the regular work of the Board of Selectmen, I started the year co-chairing a Sustainability and Enhancement Committee comprised of residents and representatives from government, local nonprofits, other organizations, with the goal of supporting the work of the town's Environmental Affairs Department and the efforts of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as each relates to sustainability and enhancement activities. In addition to structure and organization, the committee has been supportive of several town hall pilot initiatives, including an electric vehicle charging station at town hall parking lot, something that we both talked about a lot on the campaign trail, and measures to encourage waste diversion and reduction in town facilities, something that's topical right now, opportunities for safer and enhanced bicycle and pedestrian options. And as we move past this initial stage of the crisis, we hope to do more of this work over the next few months and tackle new challenges. More recently, I've been connecting with the not-for-profit COVID relief effort as the Board of Selectmen liaison to the United Way COVID grant process. The United Way stepped forward immediately to organize local human services nonprofits, working with the Department of Human Services and a number of our nonprofits, both on a weekly call to share information and experiences, and also to provide a connection for needed volunteers. They also established a segregated relief fund and raised money solely to provide emergency funding to these nonprofits. To date, they've dispersed just over $270,000 to 13 not-for-profits in town, and the initial grant awards have all been related to immediate needs and critical care. A lot of them are food-based, some of them are emergency shelter-based, some of it is transportation of the food services and programs to address people that are stuck at home and need additional support and services. So one of the things that I think has been really uplifting for me is seeing the way our area nonprofits are working together to ensure coverage and meet needs, as well as our town workers and our town departments. And what they're seeing and relaying to us is a significant increase in food and service support needs, particularly for our most vulnerable residents. It's been a monumental effort and a real testament to the staff and the boards of the local nonprofits and also to our community. So I'll close, I'll keep it brief because I know we have a lot of questions, but John, I want to thank you for your comments in the beginning. There are wonderful, wonderful things about our community that you see when tested in this environment. And please reach out if you have a need or you know of someone who has a need, because invariably there's somebody working on that in our community, and we want to make sure we connect them, and we want to be here for you as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jill. Okay, you're on, Fred.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, John.
Fred, before you start, I'm sorry, I was muted. I just wanted to say, while Fred's talking and really during any time, if you all do have questions that you think of while Fred's commenting on things, go ahead and post them because they'll just kind of queue up and then we can get to them later. So thank you for that interruption. And Craig, please, Fred, go ahead.
Well, thank you. That's not me. Can you hear me? Are we all set?
Yes, you're good.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I too want to thank the league and the Round Hill Association for allowing Jill, Lauren, and myself to come on here and just talk briefly about our first few months, which have been eventful, and to answer any questions that you may have. And I want to echo what Jill said about thanking our first responders, our healthcare workers, and that definition of what is essential has been expanded now. I think now when we look at people who clean our buildings, right, and the janitorial staff, they're essential, and they keep us safe too. And I think the people that deliver the food and prepare the food. So I think going out of this, there'll be a healthier respect, I think, for all types of people working in our community who not only provide significant services, but who protect us. And it's this crisis, unfortunately, being in it, but we've seen some silver linings, and we're really coming to appreciate all that they do for us. So again, thank you to them. We got sworn in on December 1st. Had lots of things we were all going to do, and we have kept to a lot of them. Certainly the big ticket items like connecting the avenue to the waterfront. We started on that right away. We put money in the budget for that, which unfortunately we've had to scale back because of the budget cuts. But we did put an RFP out for the redesign of Roger Sherman Baldwin Park. So that is going forward. It's going to take a little bit longer now, but we are laser focused on that. Town Properties Commission to look at our properties that we're underutilizing or misusing or just laying fallow. They have met already, and they had a temporary halt like everything else, but they're going to start a meeting, I think, again next week. The first Selectmen's Public Safety Committee is going to start meeting next week. John Mastracchio said. Jill mentioned the Sustainability Committee that we talked a lot about. I asked Jill to chair it, and she's done a terrific job with it. And she didn't mention this. She touched on the electric vehicle charging stations that we're going to do start off with at Town Hall. I was going to put that in the budget for next year, but thanks to a push from Jill, she convinced me that I needed to do it this year, and also to Alan Manelli, who found the money in his budget. So we're getting started on that this year, not next year. So thank you, Jill, for that extra push. We are going to do the food scraps programs. I think we're going to start it in a couple weeks. We're all excited about that. A textile recycling program that's going to be started in a few weeks. Very excited about that. The Greenwich Plaza situation that was very controversial last year. I convened a panel of 6 people, 2 from the BET, 2 from the RTM, bipartisan, Democrats, Republicans. And I picked 2 people from the community at large with a background in commercial real estate and finance. Well, I can't say everything because we're still negotiating. The deal that kind of drove everybody crazy last year is gone. And I want to thank those 6 members that have served on that and are still serving on it. We're waiting now for a counter proposal from the developer, but that's moving along. What I can say is we're doing all we can to make sure that we would be a good partner and hopefully encourage the redevelopment of our train station on Railroad Avenue, but that the taxpayers will be absolutely protected in this. So again, I want to thank everybody who served on that committee. We said we would do a couple things like coming to you very differently. So we send out an e-blast each week. You may get the Community Connections emails. We started doing Board of Selectmen workshops. So we were doing 1 a week before, and it got to be a little bit too much. So we're going to scale it back to one a month. And we're hoping to do it in the next week or 2 to get back on track with that. It was just a way for us, the 3 of us, to get together more. We have to notice it, and the press is allowed, but it's a way for us to be together more than just the twice a month Board of Selectmen meetings. We also said we want to meet once a month at night to allow those people that work during the day to attend the meeting. And we started doing that, and we'll get back to that on the other side of this. But when we started, we had good feedback from that. So lots of things are going on. Some of the things that we hit the pause button on We will resume that when we can, but we are starting now with Zoom to meet again with these committees and reestablishing some sense of normalcy and moving the ball down the field. Now with the COVID-19 crisis, we are meeting daily at the public safety complex, our emergency operations task force, with all the department heads, Jill, Lauren, the state delegation, and Congressman Himes. We meet once at 10 o'clock in the morning. We've been meeting every day. We're going to scale it back to 3 days a week. Most towns have just been meeting, or a few towns I know of have been meeting once a week. So we've been meeting quite often. I do a daily press conference at 4 o'clock, and twice a week I'm joined by representatives from the Greenwich Hospital. And we think Jill and Lauren may have touched on, we entered into a public-private partnership with the United Way. They came to us because we knew we were going to have to help out from the town side of it, a lot of the nonprofits and people and kids who are now going without food. So we kicked in $100,000. We're going to raise up to $500,000. I think they've done that already. They spent the $100,000 that we gave them. Even better news, with the CARES Act, we were given additional CDBG funds, $487,000 worth, on top of the roughly $900,000 that we got earlier. And that's all for COVID-19 related expenses. And we are going to reimburse ourselves that $100,000. And then the rest of it we're going to use for, again, COVID-19 related expenses. So the town has really stepped up. We're talking with businesses right now and talking about a plan to allow not only restaurants to open up a little bit more after May 20th, but retailers. And there's some really cool ideas out there that we're making sure that we're staying within the confines of what we're allowed to do. But it'll be a way to get people out, a way to get people back to work, but to do so at a safe distance. And we're having a meeting, I think, this Wednesday night on that. Meeting pretty much weekly with our other, sometimes several times a week with other mayors and first selectmen, including Mayor Falanka of Portchester. I got to say, Governor Lamont and Lieutenant Governor Bysowitz have been terrific. They get back to you right away, and whatever they can do, we've asked them to do, and answers to our questions, they've been right there. So it's really been really, for the most part, eye-opening how well we all can work together. It doesn't matter party or what region you're from. People are really, the overwhelming majority, not everybody, but the overwhelming majority of people have really stepped up to the plate. And we're going to get there. We're going to get to the other side of this, but we are going to prepare a report, sort of a post-mortem, where we are going to go over what we did right, what we could have done better. But more importantly, where government's going to be leaner, more efficient, and more effective. And I'll get into that probably with some of the questions later, but there will be some silver linings to this. And I want to thank everybody on this call for all that you're doing to chip in this collective effort. So thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's an amazing broad reach of so many topics, and thank all of you for everything that you're doing to keep up with it. We never really know when we're going to be called and if an administration is going to be challenging, but this is just beyond. And we all thank you for all your hard work. So now switching to our question and answer period, what we've done is we've asked our membership to send in some questions. We have about 7 or 8 questions. I don't know if we'll get to all of them, but if we allow maybe about a minute or so for each one, maybe we will. So I'll get started. And I've tried to have the questions, they come in on all subjects. And so, not to be insensitive, some of them are not related to the pandemic, and we just talk about life as it was. But many view open space in Greenwich as a major benefit, especially the backcountry. So we're curious as to what your view is on preserving the residential character of our unique 4-acre zone. And how do you see creating a balance for special exceptions such as private schools or other nonprofits when they come in?
Okay, do you want to go in an order or?
Not particularly, I mean, if you want to just kind of address that, I don't know that
Sure.
we're really going to have time for everyone to answer every one of these questions. So
Well, yeah, I don't want to hog everything up because Jill and Lauren have done all the, they've been there every
sure,
step.
sure.
With the historic overlay tool that we see, which is a great tool to preserve notable structures that we have here in town, I think it can be sometimes used in a way that's was unintended. So as we saw with, I thought, in my opinion, with the former Gibson property. So I would hope that that's tightened up a little bit. Keep it because it's a very good tool, but to tighten it up so it can't be misused by a developer coming in. I think we're the last 4-acre zone around, and we don't want to lose that. It's part of what makes Greenwich, and we do everything in our power. And I think there's broad agreement on that. But
Fred, a quick follow-up would be, when a property becomes a private school or some type of nonprofit, to a certain extent, it comes off the grand list. Can you give us a sense of how big of an impact each one individual property is? Is it like a giant effect, or is it an incremental? I mean, if you could just give us a sense of.
I think it's a good question. I think it's cumulative. We certainly are happy to have all our nonprofits and our private schools here and the hospital. But there is an issue. There is a concern when they start buying up other properties and whole blocks. That comes off the tax rolls, and in many cases they're getting free services that the rest of the people have to pay for. Not all. I've spoken to some headmasters at local schools, and they take care of their own landscaping, and they really try to do their part. But it is a concern, and so I know the BET, a couple of members have expressed that concern too. When I was in the legislature, I had spoken to a lot of the urban legislators where they really have a problem with it, where in some cases there's 50% of their properties are non-taxable. That becomes a problem for the whole state, not just for those municipalities.
Is it a problem for Greenwich, or do you see it becoming one?
It could. Right now we can handle it, but it could. If it continues, where you see more and more properties being bought up.
But you wouldn't say we're at a tipping point at this moment?
We're getting close. I think we should definitely. Well, not sending a wrong message that we really do appreciate and love having these nonprofits here. But going forward, I would certainly encourage maybe a tightening up of that, where we can continue. We could keep some of these places on the tax rolls, maybe at a different rate. But certainly, it's around the corner, if not there, John. So
okay.
It's been a concern for a while, but we're not
understood.
In the position of the other municipalities.
Thank you. Speaking of backcountry area, the Parkway School is an important part of our neighborhood. In the past, we've seen events such as 9/11 cause an influx of residents to town. This pandemic may have a similar effect, and I know Parkway School's enrollment is not burgeoning by any means. What is your view on keeping the school open so that it can continue to be a resource for our residents?
Well, from what I understand, it's not going to be closed, but I'll cede my time. Lauren was on the board of ed, and she may have more.
Sure.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, as a town, we love our neighborhood schools, and Parkway is in a neighborhood, and there's no discussion, at least from the Board of Ed's perspective. I attended their meeting last Thursday, and if that's floating out there, it's a fallacy.
Great, good to hear. Excellent. Okay, then let's not spend more time on hypotheticals. One of the other things, we're temporarily experiencing very quiet skies, but the threat of expansion at Westchester Airport is always a long-term concern. And I'm just wondering, is that on your radar at any level, just to try to keep a monitor on that? How do we continue to guard against the threat of that expanding? It's a wonderful resource nearby, but it's only because it is used relatively little. If a jet were to take off every 30 seconds like they do at the big airports, it would be a major problem. So how do you see that as a threat or not?
Well, I definitely think you have to monitor it like you. I love having it there. It's very convenient. Certainly beats going into the city or Newark, but you really, you want to balance it. And I have relatives right over the line there in Westchester, and friends who feel the same way we do. I mean, they're concerned about it too. So I think it's the, the neighborhood associations and the groups and the people there that are, they're right in the front lines that are constantly, have been monitoring it. They're critical in that, just to, keep an eye on it, because yeah, we could, it's got, we always have to keep it on our radar. But from my perspective, I like it the way it is. Wouldn't want it any bigger.
All right, thank you. Could you update us on the status of the Northwest Fire Station study? Do you support the need for a manned station and increased capacity in that part of the town? And where are we at with the study?
Sure. So that study was supposed to take about 15 or 16 weeks, and we were supposed to have it back, I think, mid to late April. We haven't received it yet. So I guess we really have to wait for that. There's been this back and forth about what's the best place to put something. From my perspective, they have this since the back of the horse and buggy days. They would stick a line in the sand and you draw a circle, and that would be the radius where you'd want the fire coverage. And that's back literally to the horse and buggy days. If you do that right on King Street, you're actually going into the White Plains. But if you do it a little bit more inland, you're actually going to get the northeastern part of the town too, which has this almost the same response times as the northwest part. So absolutely, I want to see what the study says. But
Okay.
And hopefully it'll be, days or just a few weeks away from being in our hands.
Thank you. I recently read some of your comments to the RTM about the pay to throw program. Did you want to just say a couple of quick words about that and where we stand with that?
Sure.
Just
right.
In case everybody knows what pay to throw is, I assume.
Pay as you throw is something I proposed in December to give an option to tipping fees or doing nothing and continuing to have it buried in our taxes. And in this case, it was going to be a bigger burden because we now have to pay for recycling, where before we were getting paid for it, $17.50 a ton. Now we're going to have to pay $65 a ton to have it carted away, on top of the fee, which is more expensive for municipal solid waste. So we wanted to be proactive, and so we put it out there. And it's in pay as you throw is in 43 states, but we were heard back from everybody. It takes about 8, 10, 12 months of constant public hearings and forums to get people comfortable with it. We just didn't have that time, even though it's now getting a resurgence. And we were told that the votes weren't there. But so a tipping fee, which is in 167 of the 169 towns, one other town has pay as you throw, and then one town has nothing, and that's us. They already have it, and it's all set up to go for that. So I think right now it would at least cover the budget hole, and it's worked in other towns. We've been in contact with haulers in other towns and municipal leaders, and it's always worked fine there. But I wanted to give pay as you throw. I wanted to give another option there, which I really liked. And from what I understand, there are people that would still like to study it going forward. So I think that's great.
Okay. I want to move on to Sandy's question, Spoons, but I have one more. It's really more of a comment or a request. First of all, I want to thank you for putting together what we're calling the Greenscape Committee, which is a group looking to the Route 1 corridor to just beautify, add trees, find every possible opportunity to make that as attractive as possible. And I'm proud to be working on that with several other departments and just wonderful people from DPW to P&Z to the Tree Conservancy, all sorts of great groups. One comment I wanted to say is that sometimes we find ourselves, Tree Conservancy and the tree warden, fighting to save a tree that has come up on a town-sponsored project. And what we're wondering is if you might see your way to put together more of a proactive approach, whereas right now the town would propose a project that involves removing several large trees or a big tree, and then at the very end of that, it gets posted, and then the tree warden has to have a hearing. There may be a way to involve design people up front, the tree warden up front, so that when these projects are being designed, we're not working against, we don't have like DPW pitted against the tree warden, so to speak. Just would love to have more of a proactive, everyone in town seems to just really love trees. We're finding, how important they are. It would love to see you guys find a way to put that together a little bit more coherently.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we just had that in Glenville, a project we all support. We pulled it back and put it off a year because we had to scale back both our operational and capital budgets because of the COVID-19 crisis. But it would also give us some time on that Glenville project for people for us to get those differences ironed out about the trees on that particular project. But I agree with you. And apparently this is, it's been several years and several projects. So love to talk to you offline about that, and maybe we can get something going in the next few weeks. We're proactively for the next several years. Every time there's a project, this will already be ironed out, and we won't have the discussions once it's before us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandy, would you like to ask the questions that you and the League have prepared?
I'm chomping at the bit. Okay. I want to ask you a question about the big issue that's in the news these days about the BET's reduction of the school budget by $3 million. And I want to start, I've got two aspects of that question. I'll start with Lauren. Since you're a former member of the Board of Education, are you concerned about the $3 million reduction in the school budget? Craig?
Sorry, somebody muted me. I don't think I muted myself. Certainly, whenever you're going to hold a budget flat and you're delivering a service and you've got contractual obligations, there's room for concern. So I'm concerned, but I'm also optimistic because, like on the town side, where we've discovered efficiencies, my hope is that we come together with solutions and not necessarily all the emotion and angst that's out there, and really put our heads together as a community and say, how do we accomplish this? Maybe it's not a $700,000 reduction. Maybe it's not a 3 million. Maybe it's something, in the middle, but it's that coming together. And right now, I don't see that happening. And I remain hopeful that we can come together as a community and solve it.
Okay, I want to start with another aspect of this question, and I'll start with Fred on this. What is your view on the use of the town's rainy day fund to mitigate the damage that there is concern that the reduction in the school budget would cause?
Well, I mean, the rainy day fund is just that. It's a rainy day fund, and it's to be used for situations where, when you're in an extraordinary situation. Which this certainly would qualify as. But, I'm a little uncomfortable speaking about that because I wasn't in on those deliberations that the BET had. The legislator in me knows that you have to negotiate a lot, and you never get 100% of what you want, and 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing. So that I always come at it from that because of my background and experience in Hartford. But again, I don't want to say something that would be misinterpreted as a criticism, because I was not in on those negotiations. Certainly I've reached out to a few people, and a few people have reached out to me, and I've shared some thoughts. But at the end of the day, I was told at the beginning, you have your capital and the operational budget, but as soon as you give us the capital, stay in your own lane. And I respect that. And I try to do that, and I try not to second guess people, but certainly I'm happy to always have those discussions wherever I can help, or if people think I can help.
So, Jill, I want to ask you there's been a lot of discussion around town that the BET should reopen the conversation with the schools to come up with a more negotiated idea of something that everyone could live with. How do you feel about that?
Well, thank you, Sandy. I'd like to start actually with your first question, which was, I think, to Lauren on, do you think the 3 million will have an impact? And I believe we've heard from the superintendent of schools, who actually is the person in charge with delivering the education, that yes, it will have an impact. So and then I'll just turn to the rainy day fund. Also I've tried to stay a little bit removed because nobody likes a former BET member inserting themselves into the process. But we have a healthy rainy day fund that's beyond the town BET policy. The BET revisited the policy last year and decided not to either separate out the 3 funds that are aggregated to form our percentages or to go for a higher percentage. And so I do think that there is capacity in the rainy day fund to address the underfunding and stay within our policy. So that's the second question. And now I've forgotten the third question already, but I will just say that I was both disappointed in the outcome, as I would say, oh, can they reconvene, and the process for the BET vote on the education budget. I strongly believe, as I stated quite frequently last fall, that we need to be, as a community, supporting our public schools and also our superintendent, who I think is doing an excellent job. Thank you, Dr. Jones. I don't think you're on here, but she also, like Fred, stepped right up to the plate. And if any of you are not following some of the public schools tweets and things like that across the board, please follow them. It's a very challenging time. We've seen an outpouring of commentary from the citizenry, which has been fantastic for public engagement, which I know as a league it supports fully. We need to be listening to our residents and our parents, and I would like to see both parties come back to the table. There was a request submitted by 6 members of the BET to have a special meeting to reconsider, and that request was denied. So if there's no interest in finding compromise, then why come back to the table? But I think it's an unfortunate, it's unfortunate for all of our residents. All of our property values are reliant on excellent public schools, which we have and we want to maintain. So, did that answer your question? Third question?
Very well, thank you, appreciate it. I want to turn a little corner here, Fred, and direct this one to you. Many residents in Greenwich are concerned about the state of the Greenwich real estate market. At the same time, many in New York City are socially isolating in cramped quarters and with limited opportunities to venture outside without risk. I'm wondering what we should be doing to encourage more of those city dwellers to move to Greenwich.
Well, I think number one, as harking back to John's bringing up of the character of our town and our 4-acre zone, don't change that too much. In the last 50 years, we've only gone up 4,000 people in population, and you're seeing now people who are living in the city where the city's great, but they're on top of each other, and that's where you're seeing high rates of infection. They want to come to places like Greenwich, and Greenwich certainly offers so many advantages, but I'd be very guarded against, overdeveloping the town, because then you kind of lose that advantage. So I would stay the line there, but I would also continue to look at things that we're looking at now, to focus on them, how we're going to come out of this and make this an even more attractive place to come and live and raise a family. And it's certainly, to me, it's the best of all the towns in Connecticut and on the East Coast. But is it perfect? No town is. And so that's why we have to keep working at it. And hopefully these people that are coming in from the city for these short-term rentals, hopefully they'll become buyers. And that's what I think, if we keep what's made Greenwich really a place where a destiny, regarding our physical character, but also, like developing the waterfront, making it a little bit more attractive, offering some more things. We have the assets. It's just doing them now and redoing them and rethinking them, and looking at our buildings, on the avenue that we own, beautiful buildings. What could we do with them? Can we repurpose them? Can we make them more community oriented? There's some great sketches and concepts that are floating around there that the Town Properties Committee is starting to look at. And I'm hoping that as soon as we get on the other side of this, we can start to enhance our town and make it an even better place, so that they will take it, make our real estate market that much better.
I'd like to ask just one other question. We have a primary coming up on August 11th, and then a general election on November 3rd. And I think a lot of people are concerned about whether it's a good thing for them to appear and polling places, given the potential risk of catching the virus. And so I'd like to, maybe all of you could address this in one way or another. Do you support the use of the absentee ballot, the expansion of the use so that it's for any health reason to enable citizens to vote in those two elections? And how do you feel about voting by mail as a general strategy for the state of Connecticut? As you may know, Colorado, Hawaii, Oregon, Utah, Washington State are all doing voting by mail. So if you could address that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, I'll be real quick so everybody can get their answer. We may have to. We may have to. We're doing a lot of things very differently now. And I know there's some concern about that, absentee ballots and voting by mail. We'll get, whatever it is, we'll adapt and we'll get it done. But we may have to do that we may be in the second wave of this in November. We don't know. So we have to prepare for it. You always hope for the best and prepare for the worst. So we may have to do that.
Jill?
I'm supportive of anything that is going to expand access to voting. It is one of our foundational democratic rights and as citizens and as a principle. So yes, we should be allowing for increased use of absentee ballots. We should be allowing for vote by mail, because I don't believe that we will have a situation where vulnerable people will be safe from the virus, and we need to make sure we preserve every individual's access to and right to vote. If we're not already working on it, we should be.
Lauren?
I was going to say ditto, but if I'm the third one that's agreeing, I guess that's triple.
Great. Okay. Well, so I went over by a minute there. John, do you want to start to take some of the questions that we've got from others?
Sure, that's fine. And yeah, good job staying so close to the schedule. One quick, simple one, maybe it's not so simple, is do we have a target date when Town Hall might reopen to the public?
No, we have the May 20th date that the governor, and we've kind of been staying, consistent with that, and also that those of our neighbors. But we're going over plans internally, what it's going to look like. And, I think the more you get back to some sense of normalcy, it will help people psychologically, as well as be a little bit easier to conduct business. But we're not there yet, but certainly anything we do and adjust will be with the safety of everybody first and foremost.
Okay, I have another one. What is the status of the Greenwich Railroad Station redevelopment project?
So that one is, I mentioned that before, we're waiting for the developer to get back to us. The original proposal last year that was met with a lot of controversy, that's done. We're not going to do that. That was, in our mind, that was not advantageous to the town, not by a long shot. I think we're all, Jill, Lauren, and I are all big fans of what a redeveloped plaza will look like. But it's how we get there is the important thing, and we want to make sure that we not only protect the residents now, but the future taxpayers if we don't do it right. So we have on that committee, there's 2 members from the BET, Democrat, Republican, 2 members from the RTM on the finance and land use chairman, and then I picked 2 people from the community at large. One being with a commercial real estate background, another being with a finance background. And they've been doing a great job, and they have our backs. And so right now we're just waiting the balls in the court of the developers.
Okay.
Okay. I have a question here. Does the town have a policy on restricting Airbnbs? And this is a question post-COVID.
Yeah. So we've been discussing that, and that's right before the sort of the shutdown hit. We want to have a policy in place. We want to protect the rights of people. Right now, you can rent out 2 rooms in your house just about in any neighborhood. But some of the concerns were that if somebody is doing it a lot, You know, it could be next to an elderly person could be living next door and could be very vulnerable if there's parties. So we had some meetings set up that got canceled to go over a policy, but we, just like the blight policy that was supposed to be done last month that we will get done, we will have a policy on the Airbnb this year.
Okay, this is getting back to the question of those in Greenwich who are trying to sell a house and having difficulty, and those in New York, trying to match up those in New York who are looking for getting to a little bit of a more green atmosphere. What do you think about the idea of offering newcomers to Greenwich an incentive for them to try the town facilities and beauty, for example, short-term park passes, to nudge them into becoming home buyers in Greenwich?
Yeah, somebody had sent that idea along a week or two ago. I'm open to it. I don't know. Jill and Lauren had not discussed that, but I'd be open to it. Anything to give our town a little shot in the arm and somebody a little bit more incentive to make Greenwich their home, I think is a good thing. But as long as it's fair and certainly in coordination with my colleagues and other people in town. But we haven't discussed it yet.
Ladies, do you agree?
I'm supportive of incentives, and certainly the beach pass from a revenue standpoint is not significant to the town, the annual beach pass. So that seems like like low-hanging fruit.
Okay.
Yes, I'm supportive to having a conversation about all ideas. I actually love this Q&A on the side, and I wish maybe we need to have like an electronic suggestion box as opposed to the emails. We get a lot of emails, but an electronic suggestion box, I'm going to forward that to Lauren since she's the technology guru here, where we can get these ideas and get them on the agenda for discussion. So we should be talking about how do we make our town more friendly, both to new renters, buyers, businesses, residents.
Great.
I have sort of just a light question. This is someone who has borrowed books from Todd's Point's freebie closet before it closed down, and they're wondering how they return their books. I would assume that would be just wait until it reopens. But this is a very concerned citizen who wants to make sure they do the right thing.
Well, I mean, if they want to reach out offline and they want to get the books back, we'll get them there.
Yeah.
They don't have to keep them all spring.
Do you have a question here? Are there open fields that could be converted to additional athletic fields?
What was the part? I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that.
Are there open fields that could be converted to additional athletic fields?
You know, we talked about that a lot over the years. I mean, Palmer and Stuckman, we haven't received that other third of that property yet. We're first in line. There's definitely room there, and you could still keep a big meadow and have an added field there. That comes to mind right away. You know, I don't know the Civic Center. We should be announcing something in June on the Old Greenwich Civic Center. There's maybe some opportunity there. Yeah, I think, you know, we were all hoping that when we did the public-private partnership with the land trust, those 73 acres may have had some part of it that we could have put a few fields in, but it wasn't to be the case. But it's okay. We get a lot of good trails out of it. We're going to get a lot of good trails out of it, I should say.
Is it my turn, Sandy?
Yep, you.
Okay. Here we have someone talking about the leaf blower regulations that have been amended during this time to promote social distancing. I'm not sure that's why those were amended, but maybe it has to. I'm not sure what that had to do with. Maybe you could explain that. And they're asking if that could be extended to other non-essential construction noise. What was the leaf blower regulation that was modified?
So from Memorial Day to Labor Day, we have a one blower per property ordinance. When the shutdown happened in March, people were calling up. They were cooped up. The kids are studying. They're working from home, and everybody was on edge. And they asked if they could get some relief. And we thought it was a quality of life issue, and it was a good compromise just to extend that and bring it out a little bit, expand it to start, you know, late March, April, and all of May. So that's been done already. As far as the the noise that you're hearing from construction projects, there's two schools of thought. One, while there's no traffic really, or diminished traffic to get these done now, um, I've already pulled some projects before this happened, before the crisis, the shutdown hit, and made them work during the day because people it was an agreement that was signed last summer before we were in office. So I thought we went over the details and we switched it over to day work. But people, unfortunately, every time there's a jackhammer used, you're going to hear noise. And we can't change that. We can't stop every project because everybody's home now. We're very mindful of that. We're watching the hours. We certainly want people to sleep, but it's a perfect storm. People are stuck home and you have all this noise. So there's no good answer to that, John, but we're doing the best we can, and we certainly want
Understood.
the projects to be done.
Jill, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that my recollection of our discussion of leaf blowers, it was in the beginning of the virus response, and there was also a question about whether the blowing of debris around was
Was a health issue.
was an aggravating issue for people as well, a health aggravating issue. And so in an abundance of caution as well, that was one of the considerations.
I have a
Excellent.
question that follows on that. Who's enforcing the one per property leaf blower ordinance?
You'd have to call town hall. We haven't had that many. We had one or two in the beginning, but we haven't had any since. It's not to say there aren't any violations, but I haven't received any lately.
Okay, I have a question here regarding the Board of Health budget. And was it necessary to cut the Board of Health budget during this health crisis?
Well, what we did, and we didn't set out to cut anything really. We just sat down with all the departments and we had to scale back. We didn't wait for the BET to ask us. We led by example. Even the Office of First Selectman did that. We even went to the capital projects, the aforementioned waterfront project, the funding we put in there. I pulled that out. I mean, that was the thing that got the most enthusiastic response last year when we talked about it during the campaign. And we just had to pull it off. So anything that was taken out was done in conjunction with the collaboration with the department heads. Certainly, if it's something that could end up harming public health or safety, certainly we would absolutely not want to do that. So if there's anything specific that the person who asked the question has, they can say it now, or they can reach out to me offline and I'll look into that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Here's someone who said, I'm in favor of pay as you throw, but in the meantime, do the haulers have a point with the tipping fee? Should we bid out contracts with the waste haulers from the transfer station, and could we possibly save some money that way? This has been a discussion for at least 20 years. And I appreciate that. And some of the haulers I've spoken to in the last couple of days, and they're friends of mine, even though we're on opposite sides of this issue now. There's lots of things we can do, but again, they just don't want to have a tipping fee, and they were against pay as you throw too. They were against both, and they were all in my office, and they all said they were going to fight both. I think they've changed their position, or at least a lot of them have in the last couple of weeks, to more towards pay as you throw. Over this over and over with them, and we're working and trying as best we can to. It's a hard time to do this, right? Especially in the middle of a crisis, a public health crisis. So, the BET, we're working with them, and you're talking, if you combine the municipal solid waste with the recycling numbers, it's almost $5 million. And we're trying our best, especially now, to keep the mill rate around zero increase, because there's lots of people without jobs right now. There's lots of people who have lost their jobs, have seen their savings diminish, and some of them are at the hilt with their credit. And so it's a scary time for them, and we don't want to do any more harm to them. So we're making a lot of tough decisions, but some of my friends in the hauling industry want us to just put it off a year. But how are you going to do it? Where are we going to find that money? It's not that easy. We're at the 6 o'clock mark.
Yes.
one of those people who likes the idea that we say it's 5 to 6 and we stay true to it and try to hang on to that. I want to just say a couple things in closing. One is thank you so much to all of you for being willing to talk to us. I don't know how you feel about it, but I actually find this a much more intimate way to have a conversation. I hope you'd consider this even after we go back to normal. It's kind of a nice way to talk to your local representatives and to have people have an opportunity to ask questions. We covered a lot of material in this conversation. But before we say goodbye, I just want to give a shout out to Nancy Duffy, who was as a member of the League and a League board, and also a member of the board of the Round Hill Association. And she's the person who put all of these pieces together. A lot of hard work on her part. And all I can say is thank you, Nancy. I think yeoman work as always.
Here. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that, Sandy. There was one last question that I clicked that might be a nice way for the selectmen to round up, which basically said, since you've taken office and beyond the coronavirus pandemic, what is your greatest concern for the town's future? What is your vision for the town's future? If you want to wrap with those last thoughts, we are after 6 o'clock, but we can just summarize and then close.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you everybody for this opportunity to meet with you. And I agree with you, Sandy, we should do it a lot more often. And after, on the other side of this, I do envision, and also to Jill and Lauren, couldn't have a better team to work with. They've been terrific. We are working on something right now, and I think the states of New Jersey and North Carolina, I think before this even happened, were allowing their department heads to allow certain employees to work from home 2 days a week. What we're finding is there's a way to track that, the productivity. And if the productivity stays the same, then you have a lot of opportunity there. Number one, you're going to have less cars on the road emitting pollutants. You're going to have less spaces in town hall taken up, which would free up parking for other people. And people are telling us who are working remotely that sometimes they get up at 6 o'clock and they start doing their work, and they work a little bit later sometimes. So I do think there is going to be a real opportunity to reinvent the way we conduct government and other things too. But for our purposes here, I think there's going to be a lot of silver linings, and it's exciting. We have some ideas that we'll release, and I know this is certainly, as Sandy said, if we have a storm in the future and there's no pandemic, but there's a storm and we have to cancel a meeting, well, now we know we can get the normal rules waived and we can do it remotely. And I think that's great. And it's, again, if you look at those aerial shots of cities and hardly any pollution, well, maybe this is a way to capitalize a little bit on that going forward.
Great. You guys, ladies, want to answer anything there?
Any parting comments?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I think that there are a couple of, I think you asked it in a governmental sense, and I think there's a governmental response and also a personal call to action, I would say. I think the economics are going to be tough for residents, as we know. And so I think we need to find a way to increase the vibrancy, maintain and increase the vibrancy of our community, to support our small businesses, and so actually support all of our schools, as we talked about earlier, public and private. They draw residents here, they maintain the vitality of our community. I do think in the next year and a half, as a governmental function, that will probably be a significant thought challenge for us. On the personal side, I'll go back, John, to your comments from the beginning. And as I think all of us have experienced, that we're not immune in Greenwich to the divisiveness and tensions that we see all around us. And each one of us has to take personal responsibility for creating a kind, inclusive, and caring community in whatever way, however they can. And I think that we've forged good bonds so far in the Board of Selectmen. I'm going to encourage you to reiterate your words of reaching out to your neighbors and your community, but we are each responsible for the community that we build and we live in. So That would be it.
Thank you.
Lauren?
Well said, Jill. Yes, economic recovery is of significant concern. And it's something that we're all going to have to think about together and how we navigate and return from this. And then I agree with Jill on the personal note. I remember when we were campaigning, someone asked me what the greatest advice I ever received was, and it was be kind, no exceptions. I know it's super frustrating because people's normal release isn't necessarily there. We can't go to church. We can't go to the beach. We can't interact with one another, but we still have to figure out ways to be a community and just be kind to one another. Last plug, some of us are volunteering to call our seniors in town. Believe it or not, about 12,000 of our residents are over the age of 65, and we're starting with folks that are over 80. And it's been the most heartwarming thing that I've done today is to reach out to 10 households and just say hi and check in on them, and they much appreciate it. So if you're feeling frustrated and want to feel warm and fuzzy, volunteer to call a senior citizen in your neighborhood.
Great
Thank you
comments.
to all the participants who listen in to us. And John, thank you for co-sponsoring this with us.
Yep, I appreciate your help too. This is a great venue. Thank you all. There's still some good daylight left, and it's beautiful out there. So hopefully you can all get some fresh air and enjoy the rest of this day.
Time
Thanks
for
for
a
taking the
glass of
time.
wine, everyone. Thank you all.
Be
Thank
well.
you.
Stay healthy.
Stay well.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you.